If there's one thing that can be hard to capture, it's the actual depth of a journey a player should experience while playing a game. What emotions should they have? What thoughts should cross their mind? And more importantly, just how engrossed should they be? How should a game try to capture their sense of adventure? The simple definition for adventure is basically an exciting, if risky, activity that one enters. But that's not exactly what we're looking for. There's a genre for adventure games, and those typically focus on story, puzzle solving, and exploration. But we're looking for something a bit more romanticized, something that could encapsulate a lot of different genres. John Levi, behaviorist author, states that adventure should be exciting and remarkable, possess adversity and/or risk, and bring about growth. Being a behaviorist, of course this is in the realm of non-fiction, but applied to games, it acts as a bit of an emotional proxy. As such, I think we could translate this as engagement, risk, and progression. In addition, I feel we should add environment, where the journey takes place and how big the adventure may be, as well as social, any interaction the player may have with NPCs and potentially other players. Shuffle this around and we have peers. A lot of this will have some overlap with each other, and some of this won't apply to specific games. Progression is a concept that may take a number of forms through a variety of games, but I think there's three main categories for it: narrative development, character improvement, and player improvement. Narrative development is the most obvious of the three. As the player progresses through the game, the narrative unfolds before them. This may take place in cutscenes or in-game events that shape the story, like Half-Life. For some players, narrative development is a reward to keep going. What happens next? Is there a cutscene at the end of this level? I want to see what this character says or does. Like any game that may have a story, it may not exactly develop at a satisfactory pace. Sometimes, it feels like a story may focus on dialogue more than plot movement. And there are cases where side stories come in and distract the player from the main narrative. Neither are necessarily bad, but it does slow the main plot line down. A more simple form is the old faithful level progression, going through zone by zone to reach the end, like old school platformers. While a plotline may not be at the forefront, it is a type of narrative development. Character improvement is a form of progression that focuses on developing the abilities of the main character and perhaps the party they have. This may come in the form of levels, unlocked abilities, or both. Each gain of skill and health shows the character is getting more and more powerful or viable with the task at hand. This could come in the form of mini characters. I mentioned a player's party, but we could look at real-time strategy titles where a large force could be made up of upgraded units. Player improvement is a common thing among, well, pretty much every game. The player becomes more and more knowledgeable about the mechanics, makes more intelligent choices, develops strategies to deal with obstacles, and hones skills that will be necessary to complete the game. This could range from employing building structures that will help their virtual nation to getting better reflexes in first-person shooters. Some games will have all three come together to help solidify the adventure, while others may just have the player improvement, as each game at least has some form of mechanic to learn. Engagement is every interaction the player may have with a game, from learning the mechanics to engrossing themselves in a narrative that it may have. Engagement is the most critical peers element because it encompasses both gameplay and narrative. It's important to bring the player into the world that the game is trying to present. This may mean a satisfying gameplay loop, a captivating narrative, or an immersive environment with rich lore and believable land. That said, it's also such a broad topic that the best way to describe it is getting the player in the zone. The game must be fun, but fun is a subjective concept. While some players may not care much about the gameplay, they may find the story fun. Others may be the opposite. They're enjoying the gameplay but couldn't care less about the story. A game may also be fun in another, less obvious reason. Perhaps the land is intriguing and they want to discover every inch of it. Point is, something has to be a draw for the player to make them engage. Every journey takes place in some sort of environment. Some may be limited to a shopping mall, while others can cover an entire galaxy. Some could be beautiful with lush green lands and others disgusting with shanty buildings and grime everywhere. Each can be captivating for several reasons. Perhaps the lore behind the land is fascinating, and maybe the concept is intriguingly alien to the player so they can't turn away. Maybe the adventure takes place over such a large territory that the environment is fascinating purely because the adventure itself is grand in scope. There are a number of ways to show this environment, using a lot of different tools that you have perhaps seen before. Linear path is a simple one, and a classic. You go from point A to point B. In this, what you see is what you get. from World 1.1 to World 1.2. Like the old school platformers that were previously mentioned, some games may show the next level that you're about to reach before it loads in, like Half-Life. Some games may offer more exploration through branching paths. In such games, exploring smaller zones could be offered. The game itself may be comprised of corridors, but it offers choices and secrets. Certain points of the story may unlock new zones. Fable is a strong example of this. Some games may be small in scale, but take place in much larger environments lore-wise, such as an island or a large chunk of a nation or state. Perhaps there's a collection of points the player may be able to enter to explore a town or dungeon. The town could be fully explorable, but it's perhaps broken up into smaller chunks. It offers a lot of people to talk to, items to buy, quests to accept, but the actual maps are small. The original two Fallout games are an example of this. I put open world and pseudo-open worlds together because they both attempt to convey the same feelings. That is, an emphasis on high exploration and significant amount of freedom. The difference is open world titles have very little, if any, need to load a different map or area of the same map. Pseudo-open worlds may have a number of smaller maps, usually no more than 4 or 5. Regardless, both offer a large amount of land to freely roam around. It's encouraged to explore every inch of the land to find new discoveries, see interesting things, and invest a lot of time into this world. Some may have towns to visit, while others are all about the natural environment. I recently did a video discussing the rise of such games if you're interested. Finally, sandbox maps. This is perhaps the idea of freedom within its purest form. An entirely open environment in which you can manipulate the world around you in vast ways and have zero expectations from the game to do anything. Some of these are survival games, while others are GOT games, and some are just pure sandbox titles. While there may be side quests, there usually isn't a main quest, but there is typically a reason to explore. The world may randomly generate, and this game simply says have fun. You make your own goals if you have any. That ultimate freedom and those goals you set for yourself is what the adventure is about. Still, most adventures have risks. In games, it's commonly the risk of health. Enemies will attack you, combat is around every corner. But this isn't always the case. That said, almost every game has some type of losing criteria. Though, even with such criteria, rarely does the punishment last longer than the click of reload. You may get a bad ending cutscene, or have to restart from a lesser progress point, but it's not often more than that. There are one-life Ironman challenges a player may take. Some may stream such and stake their reputation, evolving the game-oriented risk to something that can potentially affect them on a real-life, or at least online, level, if only mildly. Of course, there is often risk within the narrative for the character the player has control over. A loss may impact the protagonist on a personal level, or perhaps doom everything that character holds dear. Such doesn't have much bearing on the player, except perhaps slight emotional care, but it does have risk associated with the adventure the protagonist partakes in. Finally, they're social. Often there may be NPCs the player can engage with that may heighten an emotional investment with the adventure. Growing to care for specific people, for whatever reason, may result in stronger engagement overall. What does failure mean for these individuals? Will they die? Or perhaps success means they progress and develop further in the future. Choices made prior may also significantly impact what happens to them as well. Choice and consequence is an effective tool at making people consider what actions they take. Still, perhaps there's not many NPCs that you can communicate with. Maybe the loneliness is intentional. You're by yourself, heightening the need to survive. Danger may exist everywhere you go. You have no one to rely on but yourself. The lack of social interaction may be a useful social tool in itself, despite the contradictory nature that may have. Or perhaps your adventure evolves past the intended NPCs. Maybe you join an online clan or guild and grow to care about your online companions. You gain a sense of genuine, real friendship for your adventure. People who may have been with you since you started your days as a rookie, who stay with you when you're a high level. And they're people you will one day lose. Whatever the case, NPCs or players, a type of camaraderie can be empowering. Peers isn't the end-all be-all of giving a sense of adventure in these digital interactive forms, but it is something I have noticed in a number of titles. I find many of these to be more or less true for most games. There's other elements that can be applied, more considerations to be altered, and different thoughts to be had. Each digital adventure can be personal even as so many people share the same moments. What feelings come to you at an event may be different from others. Perhaps you have your own ideas, your own personal impacts of these situations. Feel free to give your thoughts in the comment section below. A very special thanks to my channel members, especially the Members Thrice Over members like That Crazy Game Developer and Denny McPhee. If you wish to support me and join as well, I'd be more than happy. Otherwise, like, share, subscribe, all that typical YouTube stuff. Thank you. Have a good one.